Hey everyone. I want to talk to you today about adversity. Such a fun word, right? Actually, I want to talk to you about advancing through adversity. How you can take life's painful moments and actually leverage them to live a more fuller and richer life. It is possible. Why don't we start by defining adversity? What is adversity? Well, when I went and looked it up, it says that adversity is difficulties or misfortune. That does not sound fun to me. And I don't think any of us look forward to it. But if we've lived longer than 30 minutes, I think we can all agree that adversity is just a part of life. It comes in all shapes and sizes at different seasons in our life. Sometimes there's more or less, but it's just a part of life. From your alarm clock going off in the morning to traffic on the way to work, difficult coworker or work tense situation at work, relational issues, financial issues, adversity abounds. It's all around us. So I want to encourage us that we can, if we can see it for what it is, we can actually embrace adversity and we can build muscles that help us to deal with adversity well, so that when times of extreme adversity, like a health scare or a bankruptcy or losing a loved one, that we can actually be prepared for those things. And when they show up at our door, we don't have to be blindsided or feel ill-equipped or unprepared, that we can actually have our minds set up ahead of time on how we're going to handle those things to help us move through those times of extreme adversity with a little bit of grace and ease, and to be efficient and effective in how we navigate through those things. So in order to share with you more fully, I want to share with you 2 times in my life when I've faced and experienced extreme adversity. And one of the examples, I didn't have a system for it, so I want to share a little bit about what that experience was like. And then a second time when I did implement a system and structure around it, and how that helped me to navigate through more effectively. In fact, there are 5 keys that I've found, 5 steps, so to speak, that are instrumental in helping you navigate adversity and to leverage it to your advantage. So let's get started. So the first example of adversity when I didn't use these steps and these keys is a couple of years ago, when I actually lost my mother to suicide. I had grown up in a very unhealthy, dysfunctional home. My father was and is an addict. And so my upbringing and my adult years was riddled with a lot of dysfunction and chaos and toxic behaviors, toxic thinking, which in and of itself, is certainly adversity. It had been kind of ongoing drama around my father's addiction and his unhealthy relationship with all of us, and most importantly, his relationship with my mom was severely affected by it. They had an incredibly codependent, unhealthy relationship. And as an adult child, loving my parents and wanting my dad to get well, it affected me certainly greatly to see the pain that they were both in, individually and collectively. And my mother had become my best friend. She was the one that I talked to nearly every day and shared all of my life with. And I shared her struggles as well. So my heart was always with both of my parents and wanting them to be healthy and whole and experience peace and joy and all those things. It took a big toll. Their whole relationship and dynamic took a toll on our family. But my dad's health had been failing for several years, and we actually were somewhat preparing to lose him. And so it came as a complete shock to me the morning of February 1st, 2017, when my dad, who had recently been released from the hospital himself, called me to notify me that he had found my mother that morning, passed away next to a bottle of pills. The first thing I remember feeling is disbelief. And I think most people who've been through something traumatic can share that that's a common experience. Your brain cannot wrap around the facts, the information that's coming in your head. I just remember yelling, no, no, and and not believing it. I remember not being able to put shoes on in order to drive over to my parents' house. A drive that should take 15 minutes that took me 45 minutes because I kept turning down the wrong streets, you know, and just shock is the only way I can describe it. But in the days and weeks after, when the shock started to wear off and my mind began to grapple with the implications and the reality that my mom was gone and that there were so many questions surrounding her death, and my dad's details or lack of details around the days leading up to her death only added to that confusion. So I just lost myself. I questioned my faith. I questioned my upbringing. I questioned everything in my life. Up was down and down was up. It was very disorienting. I didn't feel like I had anything to stand on or hold on to. I had trouble going to work. I wanted to leave my position. It completely rocked my entire world. And I remember just giving into it to a certain extent. It was a wave and it carried me away and I went with it. I was not intentional about how I was processing anything. It took me wherever it wanted to take me, and it was my taskmaster, and I allowed that to continue. For months after her death, I just really struggled. It was a struggle to get out of bed in the morning. It was a struggle to go to work. It was a struggle to focus on anything other than the fact that she was gone. I just hurt deeply. And as other people began to move on with their life, it was actually, I was offended, you know, that everyone else could just resume life so quickly and easily. And I had lost my mom and my best friend. And so I struggled for several months. It wasn't until I went to a leadership summit at where I was working at the time, sent us all to a 2-day seminar, and I saw a woman there who spoke about surviving the Rwandan genocide. And she shared the horrific details of being hidden and spared during the Rwandan genocide, but also hearing and experiencing the fact that her entire family and virtually everyone that she knew was killed in the genocide. She shared about the hurt of that and the pain of that and how the Lord led her through a process of healing and forgiveness. And there she stood in front of me, full of joy, full of expectation of good, looking forward to the future. She was married and had two children, and she had a rich, full life. And for me, it was hugely instrumental. She became my example. She became a beacon of hope for me. Because one of the other things that grief and tragedy can do is it can isolate you. If you have something traumatic happen to you, sometimes the people around you can't understand. They can't relate. You know, the joke in my life at the time, because of all the circumstances around my mom's death, was that I said, you know, I feel like this is an episode of Dateline. Like, this can't be my life. And so the fact that I felt like nobody could understand just kind of further compounded the hurt of the grief. I was dealing with the grief in the first place, and then I felt extremely isolated and alone. So for me, hearing that woman's speech was a turning point for me. It was when I think for myself, I decided that I wanted to get well, that I wanted to be happy again, that I wanted to experience peace and joy. I didn't want to live the rest of my life in a place of sorrow and sadness. And so I made a real intentional decision after hearing that speech that I was going to put myself to the task of going through the steps to heal and recover from this significant hurt. So it was out of that these 5 steps were developed and created things that I did to start to help my heart heal and recover from that pain. I'm going to go over the 5 steps with you quickly and then share how I applied them in future seasons of my life. So the first one is exactly what we just talked about. It's establishing a framework for how you intend to process this thing that's come into your life. The truth of the matter is you do have a belief system. You do have a framework that you're filtering everything through. We do it all the time, every day. Our perceptions and our belief systems really do determine how we're going to react and engage with the things that come our way. And so whether you know it or not, if you're facing adversity, you have an active belief system in place that is causing you to filter that hurt one way or another. So the first step is to be aware that exists And then to take an honest look at what is the belief system that you're applying? What is the framework that you're filtering this through? And does that serve you? For me, for example, with my mom, I wanted answers. I wanted to know exactly what happened the night that she passed away. I wanted to know concretely the details, if she took her life, if my dad had anything to do with it. I wanted to know, why the hospital let my dad go. I wanted to know why the police didn't investigate this more thoroughly. Like, I just wanted answers, and I wanted justice. And that is a really alluring trap. That is a place that a lot of people get stuck. When things happen to us that are unfair, it's human, it's natural to demand, to want justice, to want answers. Our reasoning mind screams out. We have something horrific and illogical happen to us, and our reasoning mind just thinks, if I can just make sense of it, I'll be able to have peace. And I still, to this day, I don't have answers around my mom's death. I do have peace. And I know a lot of people who have found the answers that they've been looking for, and it still didn't bring them peace. So that's the first step, is to determine, what do you want? Do you want answers? Do you want justice? Do you want to know why? Do you want peace? While they're not mutually exclusive, those always don't go hand in hand. So I want you to consider, what is it that you want? And understand, it's your choice to choose what you want. But that's gonna determine how quickly you're gonna move through it and what you're gonna get in the outcome. So if it's answers that you want, then you may someday get answers. I won't necessarily guarantee that you get peace. So that's the first step, the framework. What is it that you're trying to get? What is your belief system about that? The second step is, once you establish the framework, what you're wanting to get, what you're believing about this, you need to now protect it. And you need to protect it from two groups of people. The first are others, and the second is yourself. So the first, if you've decided that you're going to face this adversity and you are going to come out the other side with peace and healing and hope, and you're going to be a stronger version of yourself, you really need to protect it from people that would say contrary to that. There's whole schools of people out there that will take something horrible in their life and use that as a justification to be miserable for the rest of your life. It's tragic and it's sad. It breaks my heart when I see people do that. But the truth of the matter is that there are people that choose to live their life that way. And if you're not careful, those people can project their feelings onto you, and it can actually be a deterrent for your healing process and your recovery. When you lose someone that you love, people are really quick to share with you how hurt they are for you, how devastated they are, and they have their own grieving process going on. And if you're not careful, their grieving process can get thrown onto you and actually slow you down, or actually hinder the work that you're trying to do to heal and recover and find peace. So you need to protect it from others. You need to be very careful what you let come in your ears and come in your eyes. Be mindful of the information you're reading, what you're watching on TV, and again, the people that you let speak into your life. Be protective of this framework that you've put in place. The third step is, and the second group of people you need to protect it from is yourself. So your own thoughts, especially when trauma happens, those thoughts are going to come into your mind. You're going to relive that moment. You're going to relive, you're going to have questions about what happened, if you could have done anything. That's a very natural thing. You can't stop the thoughts coming into your mind. You can, however, control what you do when they do come in your mind. So when you find your thoughts being assaulted by things that are contradicting the belief system, the framework that you've put in place, you need to grab hold of those thoughts and not let yourself ruminate or have a downward spiral with it. You need to talk back to yourself, so to speak, and say, no, this isn't going to kill me. This isn't going to wipe me out. This isn't going to last forever. Whatever that framework is for yourself, you need to talk back to those thoughts and replace them with the framework that you've already decided. You've already chosen that this is how you're going to process it. So you need to let your mind know that. And your mind will learn. It's true. Your mind and your thoughts will follow. You can redirect your mind, and eventually your mind's going to come to the conclusion, oh, This is something that we're going to get through. And this is something that in the long run is going to be beneficial for us, even though we can't see it right now. So it will listen. The fourth step is community. We were designed to live relationally. We are literally built to draw strength and love and support from one another. So while you need to be protective of the framework, you also need to have community around you that is going to support, that's in agreement with the framework that you're embracing. So you need to find people who have the same point of view, that are believing in the process that you're undergoing, and that they can come alongside you, that they can encourage you, that they can support you, that they can speak into that. And then the fifth step is to find a purpose for your pain. I firmly believe that whatever happens to us, both good and bad, is not just for our own benefit. It's actually for our lives and for others' lives, so that it can be a blessing to us and we can be a blessing to others. So whether it's a good circumstance or even the most horrific of circumstances, think of the woman that shared the Rwandan genocide. I'm forever thankful. While it was horrific for her and her family, it helped me in a time of darkness. And had she not gone through that and not figured out how to turn it to good, who knows, maybe I would still be stuck in that place of grief. And so I'm eternally thankful for that. And that is the opportunity that each and every one of us have, is to take our pain and use it to somebody's good. If only the good that you can find is that it makes you more aware of how precious life is, and if it causes you to want to make a difference in other people's lives, then that in of itself is a huge gift. And so taking your pain and using it to bless someone else is a huge part of your healing and recovery and being able to advance through adversity. So now that we've talked about these 5 steps, I want to share a second time of extreme adversity in my life and how I practically applied these steps to help me navigate through in much faster fashion. So I shared with you that addiction is very prevalent in our family. My father, and on kind of all sides, surrounded by addiction, and my son, unfortunately, was not exempt to this. My son, Quentin, experienced drug addiction. He started messing with drugs at age 12, 13, and we walked through several years of the ups and downs that addiction bring, which is adversity. That is long-term kind of marathon running adversity. I know firsthand what it's like to have to kick your child out, to have him be homeless at times, to not know where he is, not know if he's alive, getting calls in the middle of the night, everything that comes with addiction. And it's awful. It's awful. I mean, that's the only way to describe it. At the time when this happened with my mom, my son Quentin actually was in a fairly stable place. He was in college, and he was struggling a little bit in college, but he was doing well. And the loss of my mom devastated our entire family, and he was no exception. So Quentin quickly spiraled down out of control and kind of went on a bender and was using every drug known to man, and we had to do some tough love and make some tough decisions. But it was a little bit later, about a year later, when he had actually made a commitment to get sober and was looking forward to the future and optimistic. He actually was planning to move down to Florida and join me and my daughter here in Florida. And we were all hopeful and optimistic and looking forward to the future. That some friends back in Minnesota gave him a going away party, and he went out with them that night and had a night of celebration. And unfortunately, he passed away of a drug overdose that evening. So July 8th, 2018, not that long ago, my son Quentin died of a drug overdose. I found out about it, sadly enough, initially through social media posts. And his friends reached out to me, and after a couple hours of frantically calling police and hospitals and everybody we could think of, it was confirmed to us that he had passed away from a drug overdose. Now, I can't say that the shock and the initial physical pain and just trauma that hits your body, I don't know of anything that can stop that from happening. I think that's part of our natural wiring and mechanism. Your body just goes into shock. But I do know that in the coming days after he passed away, I made a very intentional choice, and it made all the difference in the world. I made a very intentional choice to not go to the why, not go to the what happened and why and demand answers. And I didn't go down that rabbit hole. Instead, I chose to focus my energies on what I believe is the eternal truth, that he is not gone forever. My son knew Jesus as his Lord and Savior, and I believe wholeheartedly that he is seated in heavenly places right now. I also believe that he and I will be reunited one day and that we'll have all of eternity together. And that one belief has been, was my floor. You know, so when my mom passed away and I felt like the floor was swept out from underneath me, with Quentin's passing, that became the floor. That one truth, that one belief system became the framework to which I will process this entire thing through. And that has made all the difference in the world. So as we said, you come up with the framework and then you have to protect it, right? From other people and from yourself. So there are other people who don't believe in heaven, who believe that death is just the finality. And for them, losing Quentin is even more catastrophic because they don't think they'll ever see him again, and they can't understand, you know, a mother losing their child. And so I had to be very careful to not let their thinking influence my thinking. I had decided this is the framework that I'm going to process this through, and I needed to protect it. I also needed to protect it from people who, you know, losing a child is devastating, and there are people who've lost children and never recovered. And I went to some grief support groups and saw that firsthand. And I decided I was not going to be those people. I was not going to be 10 years from now in a group crying, talking about how I can barely get out of bed. Like, that was not what I wanted for my future. And I had to make very intentional choices on how to do that. So protect it from other people and then protect it from myself. You know, I remember very distinctly one day driving in my car, and this thought, this panicked, like anxious thought came that said, he's gone, he's gone, he's gone. That's all I could hear. And I started hyperventilating. I was having a tough time driving. That thought was so strong. And I had to fight back and talk back. And I literally said out loud, he's not gone. He's just not here. He's not gone forever. I'll see him again and we'll have all of eternity to spend together. And though that panic thought left. And so it's living proof that you can take your thoughts captive. You can fight back with this belief system that is more supportive for you. And community, I'm so thankful that I was attending an amazing church at the time of his passing and was surrounded by people who were lifting me up in prayer and supporting me and held the same belief system that I did about eternity and the eternal perspective and truth about it. And they were someone to weep with me when I needed to weep, and also encourage and support me and remind me of the truth that I was embracing about this situation. And I'm so thankful for them. And then the last step, finding a purpose for my pain. At the time of his passing, I was working at an organization that dealt in addiction recovery. And so I was able to speak into the lives of the men and women in the program, and specifically the men, to be able to share with them the hurt of a mom who's lost their son. And for them to know if they were gone, if they died, how sad we would all be, how sad their moms would be. For them to just see a grieving mom's heart. For them to know that they have value and worth, and to know that it's not too late for them. For them to realize the preciousness of their life, that not everybody gets an opportunity to be made whole. You know, some people make a mistake and they don't get another chance. And for them to grab hold of the chance they had through recovery and sobriety, and for them to live a full life. And sharing with those guys and seeing them find freedom. And if my story could at all be such a small part of encouraging them to stay committed to the program and to stay committed to find sobriety for their family's sake, for their children's sake, I can't begin to express how meaningful that is for me. In fact, I am believing and demanding that his death will not be in vain, and that thousands and thousands of lives will be impacted by his life and by his story. And so we've dubbed it, you know, his name was Quentin. We called him Q. That was his nickname. And so we've dubbed it Q's Army. So whenever I go and talk with folks that are struggling with addiction and share his story and encourage them to find healing and hope and recovery, I always ask them to join Q's Army. And anything that they go and do in their life that's meaningful and positive, it gets credited